3. Brhad Bhagavatamrita, Part 2, Chapter 5, Text 124. Who can describe the charm of those pastimes which bewildered even Brahma when he saw them? Krishna himself assumed the forms of the calves and cowherd boys, and yet he went to search for his friends and calves like an innocent child. Commentary: this pastime is doubly bewildering. Krishna does something possible only for the supreme mystic, yet he acts like a naive child. Narada Muni feels so charmed by this pastime that he doubts his ability to describe it. 125. Lord Brahma came to understand better than anyone else the special glories of Gokula, the abode of all those pastimes. So, with great respect, he praised the Supreme Lord, who embodies the exalted tastes of pure love in Braja. Commentary: Brahma's defeat by Krishna in their match of wits not only humbled Brahma, but also elevated him in understanding of Krishna's pastimes in Gokula. So much so that Narada calls him Mahatmya Vishesha Vittama, or the best of those who know the special glories of Gokula. We find evidence of Brahma's understanding in his solemn prayer to Krishna, Tadbhuri bhagyamihi janma kim api atavyam. My greatest possible good fortune would be to take any birth whatsoever in this forest of Gokula and have my head bathed by the dust falling from the lotus feet of any of its residents. Their entire life and soul is the Supreme Personality of Godhead Mukunda, the dust of whose lotus feet is still being searched for in the Vedic mantras. Brahma became qualified to praise Krishna suitably by realizing him as the reservoir of all ecstatic moods of Braja Prem. In many verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Shukadev Goswami expertly describes those varieties of rasa. For example, 10:13:22. Quote, the mothers of the boys, upon hearing the sounds of their flutes and bugles being played by their sons, immediately rose from their household tasks, lifted their boys onto the laps, embraced them with both arms, and began to feed them with their breast milk, which flowed forth because of extreme love specifically for Krishna. Actually, Krishna is everything, but at the same time, expressing extreme love and affection, they took special pleasure in feeding Krishna, the Parabrahman, and Krishna drank the milk from his respective mothers as if it were a nectarian beverage. Brahma himself also very competently described these rasas in his prayers, 10:14:31. Ahoti Dhandya Vrajago Ramanyaha. O Almighty Lord, how greatly fortunate are the cows and ladies of Braja, the nectar of whose breast milk you have happily drunk to your full satisfaction, taking the form of their calves and children. All the Vedic sacrifices performed from time immemorial up to the present day have not given you so much satisfaction. 126. Please worship the wonderful pastimes the Lord enacted, such as tending the cows, honoring his elder brother, glorifying the beauty of Vrindavan, and imitating the singing of the bees. Commentary. This verse begins the recounting of Krishna's Poganda Lila, the pastimes of years 6 through 10. Besides imitating the bees, Krishna and his friends would also imitate the chattering of parrots, call out in deep voices to the distant cows, and enjoy naps on beds of soft leaves. 127. The Lord disposed of Dhanuka and his relatives in the Talavan and met at dusk with the women of Braja. These pastimes I cannot adequately praise. I can only offer them my respects. Commentary. Because the cowherd boys wanted to eat the fruits of the tal trees and play with them as balls, they asked Krishna and Balaram to rid the Talavan forest of the ass demons who refused to allow anyone to enter. And Krishna and Balaram did so. After such sports, when Krishna came home in the evening, at the entrance of Nanda Maharaj's village, he would be greeted by his family and friends, including the young gopis. Quote, there's two verses. Tamgo Rajas Churita Kuntala Badha Barha. Lord Krishna's hair, powdered with the dust raised by the cows, was decorated with a peacock feather and forest flowers. The Lord glanced charmingly and smiled beautifully, playing upon his flute, while his companions chanted his glories. The gopis, all together, came forward to meet him, their eyes very eager to see him. With their bee-like eyes, the women of Vrindavan drank the honey of the beautiful face of Lord Mukunda, and thus they gave up the distress they had felt during the day because of separation from him. The young Vrindavan ladies cast sidelong glances at the Lord, glances filled with bashfulness, laughter, and submission, and Sri Krishna, completely accepting these glances as a proper offering of respect, entered the cowherd village. Paragraph. Narada feels unable to describe such intimate exchanges between Krishna and his devotees, either because words are incapable of capturing the essence of these pastimes, or because Narada fears that if he says more than a few words about each pastime, he will become too ecstatic and lose control of himself. Now, therefore, unable to freely offer elaborate service to these pastimes, he simply offers them obeisances with his hands. 128. The sport that the son of Yashoda enjoyed in the lake of Kalia disturbs me so much with both sorrow and joy that I can't bear to remember it. How then can I recount it to you? Commentary. Remembering the violence done by Kalia made Narada sad, but remembering how Krishna tamed Kalia by dancing at his hoods enlivened him. 129. When the Lord's anger swelled, what a punishment he gave to that wicked, cruel-hearted creature, and what joy the Lord felt when he performed his festival of dancing on the stage of the serpent's upraised hoods. Commentary. Kalia had the arrogance to grasp with his filthy coils the divine body of the Supreme Person, thus causing great anxiety to the Lord's devotees. Kalia's heart was full of wicked pride, and he felt no shame raising his hoods high at all in the air. Therefore, Krishna gave him a fitting punishment. He turned Kalia's hoods into a dancing stage and gleefully pummeled the serpent into submission. 130. Even Anantashesha is unable to describe such punishment and mercy to the serpent's many wives who offered Krishna prayers and worship, and to Kalia himself. I bow down. Commentary. Kalia received the severe punishment of having his head crushed by the Supreme Lord's heels, and simultaneously the exquisite mercy of obtaining the dust of Krishna's lotus feet on those same heads. The dust of Krishna's feet is the rarest treasure. Even the original 1,000-headed serpent Anantashesh has difficulty, therefore, expressing the glories of the mercy Kalia received. But Kalia's wives managed to describe it in their humble prayers. 131. The pastime of the forest fire took place on the shore of that same lake, and a pastime with an even greater fire took place in the forest known as Munja. In the Bandiravan forest, the clever arrangement for sporting magnified the glories of Balaram, the Lord's elder brother. May all these pastimes expand our good fortune. Commentary. Krishna twice saved the cowherd boys from a forest fire, but the second fire is even more amazing than the first. In that emergency, Krishna told his friends to simply close their eyes and he would save them. And then suddenly they found themselves transported to Bandiravan. While the boys played in that forest, Lord Balaram especially showed his glories. Krishna, defeated in wrestling, carried Sridham on his back, and victorious, Balaram was carried by Palambasura, whom Balaram then killed. 132. All glories to his pastimes in the rainy season. His resting at the feet of trees, and to his autumnal pastimes, enhanced by the beauty of the forests, which heaped the pain of Cupid's torment on the women of Braja. Commentary. During the rains, Krishna enjoyed such seasonal pastimes as sitting at the bases of trees, eating white radishes, and joining his friends on the tops of big rocks to feast on yogurt rice. When the next season commenced, the beauty of the forest increased luxuriantly, expanding the pleasure of Krishna's pastimes and increasing the disturbance the girls of Braja felt from the arrows of Cupid, as described by Shukadev Goswami in Canto 10, Chapter 20, Aslishya Shama Shitoshnam. The people would forget their suffering by embracing the wind coming from the flower-filled forest, a wind neither hot nor cold. But the gopis could not, for their hearts had been stolen by Krishna. (133) When will I see with my own eyes the way he dresses in forest attire, stills everyone's heart with the downpour of sweetness from the music of his flute, and enchants all the cowherd girls. Commentary about the personality of Godhead's forest dress. Shukadeva Goswami says, quote, wearing a peacock feather, this is chapter 21, Canto 10. Wearing a peacock feather ornament upon his head, blue karnikara flowers on his ears, a yellow garment as brilliant as gold, and the Vaijayanti garland, Lord Krishna exhibited his transcendental form as the greatest of dancers as he entered the forest of Vrindavan, beautifying it with the marks of his footprints. He filled the holes of his fruit with the nectar of his lips, and the cowherd boys sang his glories. The most expert analysts of the glories of Krishna's flute are the gopis, and many of their authoritative statements about those glories are recorded in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. For example, in the 21st chapter, in the 8th text, it begins with this one, in 8 texts, starting with text 9. My dear gopis, what auspicious activities must the flute have performed to enjoy the nectar of Krishna's lips independently and leave only a taste for us gopis, for whom that nectar is actually meant? The forefathers of the flute, the bamboo trees, shed tears of pleasure. His mother, the river on whose bank the bamboo was born, feels jubilation, and therefore her blooming lotus flowers are standing like hair on her body. Paragraph. The gopis, in their constant praise of Krishna, frequently return to the theme of the enchanting power of his flute. Again, chapter 21. My dear friends, as Krishna and Balaram pass through the forest with their cowherd friends, leading their cows, they carry ropes to bind the cows' rear legs at the time of milking. When the Lord plays on his flute, the sweet music makes the moving living entities become stunned and the non-moving trees tremble with ecstasy. These things are certainly very wonderful indeed. More than anything else, the sound of Krishna's flute most fully expresses the essence of his sweetness, madhurya. So the wonders of Krishna's flute playing will be elaborated even more in the description of, quote, the sweetness of all of Krishna's excellent qualities, Ashesha Mahatma Madhuri. Paragraph. It was particularly in the autumn that Krishna stole the hearts of the gopis by playing the flute. While speaking about the arrival of autumn in Vrindavan, Shukadeva Goswami says, Tad Vraja Striya Ashrutya. When the young ladies in the cowherd village of Braja heard the song of Krishna's flute, which arouses the influence of Cupid, some of them privately began describing Krishna's qualities to their intimate friends. Again, chapter 21. Text 134. How wonderfully he enjoyed the festival of stealing the clothes of the young girls. He climbed quickly to the top of a kadamba tree and spoke joking words to the girls. And after they offered respects with joined palms and submitted their requests, he gave back the garments he had placed on his shoulder. Commentary. In the festival of stealing the gopis' clothes, Krishna had the opportunity to share with the gopis some humorous words. Quote, chapter 22. My dear girls, you may each come here as you wish and take back your garments. I'm telling you the truth, and I'm not joking with you, since I see you're fatigued from executing austere vows. Krishna ordered the girls to come forward one by one and ask for their garments. Bhagavan Ahata Viksha. When the Supreme Lord saw how the gopis were struck with embarrassment, he was satisfied by their pure, loving affection. Putting their clothes on his shoulder, the Lord smiled and spoke to them affectionately. You girls bathe naked while executing your vow, and that is certainly an offense against the demigods. To counteract your sin, you should offer obeisances while placing your joint palms above your heads. Then you should take back your lower garments. Krishna. 135. I glorify his pastimes of begging some food from the sacrificial brahmanas, attracting the brahmanas' wives, and gracefully eating the food the wives offered. I glorify how he decorated himself and how he stood, spoke, and bestowed his mercy. And for some reason, this has a long purport, 2 pages. In the course of Shukadev Goswami's vivid description of Krishna's pastimes, he highlights several of Krishna's special attractive features. He tells of Krishna's ornaments. Chapter 23. Wearing a peacock feather, colored minerals, sprigs of flower buds, and a garland of forest flowers and leaves, he was dressed like a dramatic dancer. His complexion was dark blue, and his garments golden. He rested one hand upon the shoulder of a friend, and with the other twirled a lotus. Lilies graced his ears, his hair hung down over his cheeks, and his lotus-like face was smiling. Beautiful. Shukadev Goswami also describes how Krishna spoke. Again, chapter 23, text 25. Welcome, oh most fortunate ladies. Please sit down and make yourselves comfortable. What can I do for you? That you have come here to see me is most appropriate. We hear also about the special mercy Krishna bestowed the Brahmanas' wives by blessing them. Again, same chapter, but later, text 31. Rest assured that your husbands will not be inimical toward you, nor will your father's brothers or sons, your other relatives, or general populace. I will personally advise them of the situation. Indeed, even the demigods will express their approval. Paragraph. The love of the wives of those Vedic Brahmanas had for Krishna far exceeded the standards of worldly affection. Even the Brahmanas themselves recognized this, as Shukadev Goswami tells. Again, chapter 23 later. Taking note of their wives' pure transcendental devotion for Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and seeing their own lack of devotion, the Brahmanas felt most sorrowful and began to condemn themselves. End of that verse, text 39. The remorseful Brahmanas were unable to lovingly approach Krishna, as did their wives, but they did learn to admire their wives. Krishna consciousness. Aho Pashata Nadi Nam. Just see the unlimited love these women have developed for Lord Krishna, the spiritual master of the entire universe. That love has broken for them the very bonds of death, their attachment to family life. Lord Krishna also demonstrated noble grace in accepting food as charity from the Brahmana's wives. And this is our final verse. Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, fed the cowherd boys with that food of 4 varieties. Then the all-powerful Lord himself partook of the preparations. Bhagavatam 10, 23, 36. There's many books that do this. They take Krishna's Braja pastimes and retell them in different ways. There's multiple writings of the Goswamis that simply do that. One way to describe, it's just a meditation on Krishna's Braja Leela, meditation upon Krishna, writing and describing and remembering in sequences Braja Leela at different ages, and they have different ways of describing. There's several books like that. Some very simple like this, some very elaborate, but it's placed as part of preparing Gopakumar to go there. His stimulation of ecstatic love doesn't need stimulated, but it's being stimulated. The pastimes of Krishna are like that. There are stimulations of, according to Rupa Goswami's writings, all these descriptions of how Krishna is dressed and the flowers and his hair and how he's standing and his arm on the shoulder of a friend. It's all part of ecstatic love and awakening ecstatic love in the reciter and the hearer. That's what they're doing. Awakening ecstatic love. And we're just like, oh, here's a nice story. But as one becomes purified, it's more than just a nice story. Okay, to be continued. Hare Krishna.